It
Um,
is. I think the author's name is Daniel Cohen. He said, when in the face of all these aristocratic, beautifully dressed vampires pining about their immortality, he said something like, being bitten by a vampire is as romantic as like a kiss from your dead Uncle Boris.
there's a lot to unpack there.
That's I just kind of had to take a second. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. When I clip out your interview for YouTube, do you want it to start there?
Sure.
Hell yeah. Well, it's just about time to start your interview. I know you've got we're interviewing you in the second hour. You got kids to put down to bed in a sec, or in about an hour or so. But in the meantime, let's we've got you on the show. Let's talk to you a little bit about the things you study. You gave us a little bit about your interests earlier as we were playing the game. But now I think let's get right into it. And Jared, because you're the co-host today, do you want to thank the
Mhm.
sleuths before you get started?
Absolutely. We have an amazing team of sleuths that put Sherlock Holmes to shame as far as the detective work that they do. Um, so we really do appreciate all the work that they do going into finding, um, the big facts and the details and the things you might be surprised that they found in a fun, positive way. So thank you to our amazing sleuths.
Yes,
We
thank you so
create
much.
Sherlock.
I know it's my face on the screen every day, but I can't write these questions by myself every day.
Thanks,
Ugh, I
sleuths.
wish. Oh, well, if you get a question that really makes you go like, huh, you can thank them later too. But
Be prepared. It happens.
let's get into it right now. Dorian, what do you think?
Sounds good.
Cool, cool, cool. So this first one, this like, it came up a little bit while we were playing the game, but I guess we'll start off with like a big question for you, or kind of like a cumulative question for you. But that's how did your research on the South Slavic Vila produce a comprehensive method and model that can be applied to study other supernatural beings?
Oh, that's just me trying to sell myself to people.
Did it work,
Um,
It got him
Mis-
on the show.
Mr. Postdoc?
yeah, well, it worked a little bit, I guess. I don't know. You know, as much as I've focused entirely on folklore my whole career, I've been trained as an anthropologist,
Hmm.
mostly because number one, in Canada, there's not very many folklore departments, and number two, everyone that was sort of guiding me was like, if you take a folklore degree, you'll really limit yourself for where you could get a job. Whereas do an anthropology degree and then just cater it to that, and you'll be eligible in both places, kind of
Sure,
thing.
sure.
So part of my work was just like, number one, I was reading what was written both in English and in Serbo-Croatian when I taught myself the language. I'll call it that. I hope I'm not insulting anyone today. You have to call it all the different languages
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah, yeah.
nationalistic reasons, but and just everything I was reading didn't match up with the stories I was sort of looking at.
Mm.
So I kind of took a little bit from the like historical geographic approach, a little bit from the Perry Lord oral formulaic theory, and looking
Yeah.
at sort of exactly how stories and songs are passed down and how they travel. And then what I pretty much attempted to do was just read everything that's ever been written, try to figure out what are the like the core traditions that are being passed down, and pretty much you can't still tell a story or sing a song about her without including these parts. And then from there look at, okay, how do these things change over time? What does it look like if a woman tells a story versus a man tells a story? um, what was actually going on when these things were being collected, who was collecting them, how were they sort of repurposing them to sort of new environments, nationalistic claims, and sort of building a sort of past for the nation, and fighting between ethnic in groups about what belongs to whom. And then also looking at, what exactly were these sort of peasants in the 19th century and before actually telling, what did it mean to them, how were they using these stories, and then also where were they willing to kind of push the boundaries and say, I'm going to flip this on its head a little bit, here's how I'm going to do something unique. But what was that sort of central tradition that's tethering them and pulling them back and kind of setting the bounds for what a vila can and cannot do?
Is this kind of what you were getting at when you talked about the undoing the academic silencing of subaltern voices?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
and what, can you like specifically a little more about that?
Well, just because everything I'm looking at was studied heavily in the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century, and at the time the methods were not as sort of fine-tuned. People weren't as critical about where narratives were coming from, who's telling them,
Hmm.
for what reasons. Um, and then, as I said, there's this whole sort of industry of academic myths where scholars were trying to look at these things, but they had their own purposes in mind, and they were willing to
Yeah,
pick and choose what they wanted to tell the stories that they wanted to tell. And so it's about trying to peel away that stuff. Look at it too as its own thing, and I've written a lot on that sort of stuff, but also to really get back to, okay, what was actually being told and sort of how was it being used for people, and what did the people actually believe, or at least, say they believed.
yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. More kind of Vila questions, as long as we're still talking about about your
Sure.
girl. Um, so you've once said that that we can better understand and study the Vila in two typological facets: the mythological Vila and the Vila from folk custom. And what's kind of, can you talk about like the nuance you're making between like the sort of the mythological Vila and like the Vila that shows up in custom?
You're reading the words of somebody who had no idea how to do this research. So,
Well, someone who now knows, what would you say?
so I've tried to fine tune that a little bit, and I'm
Oh, go for it.
continuing to do it in new publications. But the simple fact was, whenever anybody was saying this is what a vila is, they were just throwing everything together. But I found that there were actually some pretty strong generic boundaries
Hmm.
around, and especially because this is an area where epic song, like oral epics, were sung until very, very recently. Like up until the 80s, you could still find these people, and there may still be some around, but they're not as vocal about it. Um, at least not in the manner that it used to be done, where it was passed down orally. There's a new one where they like write songs, and they're often political, and they read them on a piece of
Mm,
paper, and they play the old instrument. But
interesting.
but what I found was that just when she was in the songs, she was doing one thing. And these are heroic songs where there's these heroes that go to battle, and she's like a helper person.
Mm,
She swoops in to help them fight their enemies or things like that, and she's very martial. She bears a lot of sort of connections to like Norse Valkyries.
mm,
She's usually got bird wings, and she flies, and she fights with the enemy's Vila or something like that. And then
cool.
you get to the stories that people were telling in local legends, and it's completely different. It looks very close to like elves and fairies in sort of Ireland more than anywhere. And it's a lot of like they live just outside our village. They kind of at nighttime they come out and we go in. Ours is like a noisy world of sort of diurnal happenings and sort of village life and culture, and theirs is a world of nature and darkness and silence. And where we meet, they're like a dangerous force that you don't really want to mess with, and so there's just sort of in heroic legends and in epic songs, she seems to be serving a different purpose. And if you look at sort of Indo-European cognates that look very similar, it seems to be something that might be older and might be unique to the region, because that doesn't show up in any of the other Slavic groups
Oh,
aside from
interesting.
Bulgarians have epic songs with her. Whereas the other one is much more of a sort of pan-European and pan-Eurasian, really, hidden people. Uh, yeah,
That is interesting because I can see when you were talking about your different methods, like the historic geographic method and like the oral formulaic theory. I'm starting to get where some of that played into the research and the findings. Yeah.
yeah. It's as I said, I started knowing nothing. I'm probably about 5 years behind on everything because I came from some rural backwood Canadian education. My master's supervisor is like a really renowned comparative mythologist
Mm,
who knows everything about everything. He's like a Renaissance man, but also his methods aren't, they're like, a couple of decades ago he's working on a model like that. So
mm.
I mean, a lot of the things at the start was just me learning the language, fighting through these songs, being super interested with what I was seeing, and just seeing something that it didn't match up with what was being written about. Since then, I hope my sort of theoretical language has caught up a little bit with other folklorists, and yeah.
Sure, but I think that's important to point out because I think that's something a lot of that's a feeling a lot of scholars can relate to. I certainly can relate to. It sounds like my masters. You know what I mean? Where like you know a lot of things, you're overwhelmed by all the facts you found. You're trying to just you parse it and, like you said, learn the language of academia or of research. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
very important.
And there's just so much to learn that, I mean, it's one thing if you pick a really focused topic,
Yeah,
but when I'm dealing with, like, here's the 70 years of literature on oral epic, and or the 150 years literature on it, 200 years really, and here's, everything on legends and all that stuff, and it just, you can only do so much.
sure.
So it's a process that you work toward.
Right.
You got anything to add, Jared?
No, I mean, I just everything makes sense, especially when you're like trying to blend multiple like concepts, right? There's like, if you're thinking about my own research and like how do I blend in like material culture with labor lore or with like this and this, and the literature is just so vast. And that learning of just being like, I don't know. And then I'm thinking like, especially with studying vampires, right? Like the literature that you need to be familiar with is just so incredibly expansive. Like I showed Dorian, like before we started, like a new book that just came out all about Nosferatu, and so if you're gonna teach this, like whatever, and then new movies come out, so you have to like everyone's like, oh, have you seen this? Like you can't do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, like and
Well,
if you haven't seen a certain film, people are like, well, you really know what you're talking about. It's like, yes, I do. I believe me, but like you can't do it all.
Yeah.
I
Like
mean, that's why when you hit your 50s and 60s is when you finally get to be that scholar that everyone's like, any question you ask to this person, it's covered. But getting to that point, and some people are, start earlier and are faster at it, and everyone's sort of on their little path. But it's nice to. I don't think you really become a true scholar until you just start like pumping out articles like crazy and start building your own. When you finish your PhD, you have so much to say, and there's no space to say it in. And then you start chipping these little pieces off, and you're like, "Here's a little piece." And now, when I want to talk about this other thing, I just reference everything I wrote in there, and I don't, and you build a little house out of all these little bricks that you publish, and it takes the load off of that stress of like
yeah,
wanting to get everything into every page of every article you
right,
write.
That's a really good way
yeah.
of putting it.
Yeah, I can relate. I'm working on an article right now based on something in my dissertation. I'm like, how do I synthesize all these things, not plagiarize myself, but also make a thing? It's like it's paralyzing in a way.
Yeah.
Like they don't need to know. Not everything needs to be in it.
Well, and there's a lot of scholars that I've talked to. They've been like, "Oh, it's probably like an underhanded burn, but it's like, oh, I respect so much how you're just putting it out there no matter what kind of state it's in or something like that." But like, I always use the analogy of like I hung out with a lot of bands when I was younger, and I played a little bit. And there was that band that was in their basement forever, perfecting every song, and then they never went anywhere because they broke up before they had their first concert. And then there was those people who were just like, I learned 3 chords, let's go play.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah,
if you just get it out, uh, the next one will be better, and the next one will be better. But it gets you into this motion, and it allows you to start referencing things that you've already done, so that you sort of build on it. And yeah, I mean, it's just gets so much easier, and it becomes a sort of it snowballs, and it
yeah.
gets, and the quality gets better as it goes too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
some muscle memory.
Good comparison with the bands. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
As I was the older brother of the kid in the second band, and spent his whole 20s doing that.
Yeah.
Uh, you've talked about this a couple. You've hinted. You've like sort of motioned me towards this next question, so I better get to it, Dorian. And that is to say, you've mentioned uh, uh, Perry and Lord, oral formulaic theory. You've mentioned epic song. So what I really want to ask you is, if chat doesn't know, can you explain what a guslar is? Why they have social legitimacy, and what they had to say about COVID.
Oh, COVID. Wow. Okay, hang on a second.
Is he grabbing? Is he gonna grab a goosel? Is it
Um,
real gooslar hours? Chat.
I have no idea.
Yes, he is.
I have no
Chat,
idea.
get ready, chat.
I have no idea what this is.
Oh, I know what's happening.
So I've got,
My man
I've got
looking like
props.
the dust jacket to the singer of Tales right now.
So I've got props here. So
I love it.
this is a handmade gusle
Oh, that's
from
cool.
from Bosnia.
Nice.
I
Oh,
won't
wow.
play it because it's really loud and it's not a noise. It's a noise. It's an acquired taste kind of noise. But what it pretty much amounts to is it's a fiddle with a single string, and it's got these
Huh.
very decorative animal heads on the top of them. And you put it in between your legs, and you saw on it, and you play about 5 notes. And these things probably came to the South Slavs in somewhere around the 9th century, 8th century.
Hmm.
Probably came from Central Asia,
Oh, cool.
and became sort of the main tool for conveying cultural knowledge and old stories about various things. They probably started early on as mythological stories. We know now from like the genetic background of the Balkans that as much as there was this myth that Slavic groups came down and populated the Balkans, it was probably like a lot of other migrations in history where it was a sort of elite upper class that came in, and everybody else is, most people there have like 70-80% like Balkan area blood. These are, you know, people that were once Thracians, Illyrians. There's a what do they call it? Iapods is another cultural group that was there, and there are echoes of like ancient Greek storytelling, return songs that mirror the Odyssey, and there's a lot of mythological content that's stuck around in the region for a very long time. And then people started tagging that onto nobility heroes from the ones that stuck around the most were like 14th and 15th century heroes who have really mythological elements into their stories. They fight like dragons and snake men and go on these crazy quests. And then it came into sort of the early modern periods, 17th and 18th century border wars between the Austro-Hungarian and Venetian empires, and on the opposite side, the Ottoman Empire, which sort of split politically this region. And so you had these what are effectively bandits who would and soldiers that were guarding the borders, and they would go across constantly and like raid each other's villages, steal women, steal sheep, kill each other, and like sneak back into their side. And you get all these historical figures that come out, and then people start singing songs to this instrument about them. And though they slowly take on sort of epic characteristics, they're these great heroes who fight these great battles, and they all have superheroic strength, and they drink big jugs of beer, and so these stories are passed down for a very, very long time. They're traditional. They change, but in subtle ways. They had a really extreme continuity until very, very recently. Once publishing, once education really came in, sort of really starting just before the First World War, you get a real breakdown of oral transmission of these stories, and with it comes, you know, just people who don't use that method anymore. They're writing stories now. They have a sort of a literary bent on things, and they want to make sort of novel stories in new ways. So the last of that stuff really dies out around the 1950s and 60s, and it becomes this like Disneyland you know what Dorson would have called fake lore, like these guys dressing up in costumes from the 1700s
Mm-hmm.
and singing songs that they've memorized writ, rather than this sort of improvisatorial method in the sort of heat of singing
Yeah.
that they could lengthen or shorten depending on whether the audience was digging it. There's huge coffee culture in the area. They would go to coffee houses and get paid in cigarettes and coffees and little presents and things to just sing on weekends, or in the Muslim areas in Bosnia, particularly through the month of Ramadan.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so people would gather around and hear these stories that they've heard 1,000 times of their favorite heroes. You know, it's our James Bond, but it's more like our Game of Thrones. It's people in medieval times doing like wicked, horrible things to each other, being betrayed by their lovers and cutting her arms off, and or attacking their enemy and taking his baby out of the cradle and throwing it off the castle wall, and like and you know, getting in these epic battles with horses and things. But this stuff doesn't exist anymore, so I study that stuff in sort of archival collections.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, look at, you know, the tellers and the politics behind all of that stuff, and look for the supernatural beings in it and what they're up to. But now there's this kind of new modern version of it, and it's become more of like a sort of protest song. And it generally belongs to sort of extreme right-wing groups, traditionalists who, and particularly in the wars in the 90s, the Bosnians got soured about it because the Serbs really took control of it, saying the Gusle belongs to us, and this is our singing. And then they made a whole bunch of songs about the war and celebrated their kind of massacres and their victories. And so the Bosniaks, the Muslims in the area, really shied away from it. The Croats, always seeing themselves as like the really Western, more European kind of group in the area, mostly shied away from it. But there's like a core of really traditional Catholic, very hardcore traditionalists who want to go back to older values and are not ashamed of the fact that they're in the Balkans and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they sing these songs too. And so this is my super long way to get to the fact that there's a few people when COVID happened. Now a lot of these guys, they write their songs, they get their traditional costume on, somebody holds the paper for them, and they film themselves on their cell phones and put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so I went through just every song in this kind of fashion that was being sung, and just talked about, you know, like in one article, just sort of what's going on, what are they singing about, what are they telling us. There's a lot of conspiracy theory and a lot of different things like that tied into it, and like folk remedies, you know, take your garlic and drink your hard liquor and you'll save yourself from the virus, and a lot of like this heroic imagery being pulled back in. So like, you know, the nation has to fight the evil COVID, and the knights at the head of the battle are you know, medical board and things like that.
Trying to apply, like, if the old epic tales were like Game of Thrones, like who the medical board is betraying. Yeah.
It's it's like
hello.
What's that?
Oh, she sends his regards.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like if Tony Fauci was being sung about by a country musician in the South, and being like, you know, Tony Fauci's gonna save us, he's a cowboy, and like it's the Balkan version of that.
Don't ask me how I know this, but his name is Grant Peoples. GGC asks, put alcohol on your sock. Is that sounds like appropriate to what you're saying about your home remedies.
Yeah, so the Turks have a drink called raka, which is made from anise. And in the Balkans, they make a wide range of really hard alcohols. Everyone calls them brandies to translate into English, but they're way harder than German brandies.
Sure.
It's like moonshine made from fruit.
Hell yeah.
And so
Cue Caroline.
Yeah.
Yeah, The big ones are plum and grape, but they'll make it from anything and everything. Some are sweeter, some are really hard. And the sort of basic one that everyone makes from plum is seen as like a cure-all. So when babies have fevers, they're like grandmothers will just rub them up and down with alcohol to bring the temperature down, and everybody drinks a bit for their health, and yeah.
Awesome. Speaking of drinking for your health, you've mentioned this a little bit before, but I want to know some of the ways that Ottoman coffee culture got exoticized. I think you might know a little bit about that.
Yeah, I like coffee.
Me too.
And super
I,
saves.
I don't think I should. I think my body doesn't like it. I think I might be allergic to it, but I love it to death.
Just tell your body who's boss.
That's what I've been doing for the last 15 years.
You work for me, body.
Yeah. I'd never drank the stuff as a young person. I tried my parents from like our filter coffee, and it was god awful. And then the first time I took a trip to Europe, a Portuguese guy made me an espresso, like a latte or a cappuccino in the airport in Heathrow, and I drank it, and it was like that beautiful smell that I always got walking down the coffee bean aisle in the grocery store, mixed with like a hot chocolate, and I went nuts. And then I got, and then I got to the Balkans, and it turned out that every corner store, every gas station, every little town has a little cafe in it, and they make amazing coffee there. And so I started drinking it. And first it was like this kind of Italian style, which came in probably in the 40s. And then you go to people's houses and they make Turkish coffee with the jezva, which is your little pot with a handle on it. And you just put really, really finely ground coffee grinds in, and you pour it out into little what we associate usually with teacups from like Chinese teacups. They're called finjani there, which is the Turkish word for just cup. And yeah, everywhere you go, anytime you buy something, you celebrate with someone. Anytime somebody just wants to take you out somewhere, you go to someone's house, they give you coffee, they give you treats, they give you alcohol. And it's especially fun at Christmas time when you have to do the rounds to every family member in an area, and you get the same meal at every house. And then at every house, it's like, here's some coffee, here's some alcohol, here's some coffee, here's some more alcohol, here's some sweets. And you hit about 4 houses, and you're done. But yeah,
sounds awful.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Oh, I can't believe you put up with
You're such a hero.
I take one for my scholarship. Right? So.
Field work is just the worst sometimes.
But yeah, so for my PhD, I was working in an archive. It's the oldest folklore archive in Croatia.
Nice.
And I was looking for everything and anything written about the vila. And but while I was there, I started finding these little bits and pieces of people talking about when the Austrians first took Bosnia-Herzegovina from the Ottomans in 1878. And they started moving in, and the Croats and the Serbs were both trying to kind of lay claim to it and be like, Bosnia, they're Muslims, but they're Muslim Serbs, or they're Muslim Croats. And there was a lot of kind of lay folklorists who went into the Muslim regions, and they wrote sort of like ethnographic, sort of folk life writings on how our brother Mohammedans live, and wrote those things back. And coffee came up a few times, and I was like, I love coffee. I bet someone will like to read an article about coffee. So I used what they had written. Mostly it was just a translation article.
Sure.
Here's what they wrote about coffee, and translated into English. And then, but then wanted to contextualize it and not just make it like, here's a blurb. And so I gave like the whole history of how coffee came to the region, what it sort of means culturally for people, and what it meant in the past. And fights in Muslim communities about whether it was halal or haram, whether it's acceptable or unacceptable. Is it like wine or is it something different? And it's interesting literature if you ever read sort of things written on the history of coffee, and it's usually about what it did in the West, which is like, everybody was drunk on beer every day of their life until the age of exploration, when we bring back tea from Asia, chocolate from South America, and coffee from the Middle East. And suddenly you have these nice ways to get through your day, drink clean water, and like not die of dysentery, but you don't have to be drunk all the time, and your child laborers going to work in the mines in the age of 7 are not like drunk on beer every day.
Yeah, because that's important. Because people always talk about like, oh, they used to drink so much booze, but it was like the coffee and tea being like boiled water. It's like, wow, you mean we can drink water and not get sick? Damn, I'm gonna try this.
Yeah, I don't have to be hungover all the time.
Yeah, and it's like, this is a revelation, right? Like, oh, hey, boiling our water cleans it. Like,
No way.
who'd have thunk it? We had thought you had to ferment it to get it clean.
Right. Well, and that leads, like to the coffee culture too, and people sitting around and exchanging ideas as well, which is a super fascinating part of that.
Yeah, which is what a lot of people link, like the democracy and all these big social movements in Western Europe. They link it to coffee houses and all these different people from different sort of social levels mingling together. But in fact, in the sort of Muslim world, it was even more extreme, because there were taverns, but they were run by other ethnic groups, and it was anyone who went there, it was really frowned upon. The Ottoman Empire had a little bit more of a lax view of alcohol than we're used to in sort of modern Muslim societies. But the fact was, there was no restaurant culture, there was no bar culture, so bringing coffee houses in was like the first time that people were mingling in public in these sort of meaningful ways, and it had this same effect of having people from every sort of level of society gathered together and chilling and talking about stuff, and it had huge implications.
And the last kind of serious question about your work I want to get into is, can you get into a little bit about the work you've started doing, the research for your postdoc, which I'll let you say a little more, but you're kind of studying the role folklore plays in attitudes about Bosnians during the flow of migrants through the region. But I'll let you explain more. Can you talk a little bit about your postdoc you're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, part of this is I'm really interested in this as well, but I have to admit I like historical work better. And part of this was just, I need a career, and I thought this would really fly as a postdoc project because it's topical. A lot of people are working on this. But pretty much what happened was, on one of my later research trips to do archival research, to sort of catch up on things I'd missed during my PhD fieldwork. For a few articles I was writing, actually, now that I come to think of it, that was my PhD research. So I was living in Zagreb for 15 months, 2015, 2016, and it's when Angela Merkel said, open the gates, let them all in, and there was this huge flood of migrants into Europe. And so people have seen sort of what happened in Greece and Italy and Hungary, and a lot of that's been written on. And I was watching them sort of, nobody wants to stay in the Balkans, right? They didn't go all the way from like Afghanistan to, through Turkey, fight a bunch of border cops to just like stay in the Balkans and have the same kind of standard of living, or like a slightly better standard of living. They're almost at Germany and that's where they want to go, or France or England or whatever. So the local politics were interesting to see, because it was, we'll help these people, go ahead, let them through. And then suddenly Western Europe was like, oh, we've made a huge mistake, close all the borders, militarize them. Now we're offloading all of our like beating the migrants and pushing them back down to you guys in the Balkans, where we already, don't really include you as Europeans. Um, and so I was there. I saw these things kind of happening. It reached more of a peak later once I'd left, but I'd been to Belgrade for a while and seen people sort of demobilized in the main park in the city. And I knew they were, once Croatia closed its borders, they were heading into Bosnia. And so Bosnia got a huge flood of migrants around 2018. And they're pretty much sitting on the northwestern area, waiting to get into Europe somehow and trying to find ways. And there's a big mountain that they have to cross over, and they were going over it at night, and they called it the game because maybe they'd succeed and get to Europe, or maybe the cops would find them, beat them up, break their cell phones, throw them in a van and drive them back to Bosnia and dump them over the border. And there was chaos in in a couple of the cities on the border there. And when I got back home from my research, I was watching all these news stories come out, and it was just like, racist Bosnians, xenophobes are throwing protests because they don't want migrants in their town, kind of thing. And just like the depiction was pathetic. It was just like, they're obviously migrants have gone through insane stories, and their plight is something that needs addressed. But the locals are living in a country that's extremely impoverished, that has a government that doesn't really take care of them at all. It's one of these, what they call now, like illiberal democracies. And suddenly they're inundated with all these people. The local government's not helping them at all, and then like news media is coming, Reuters is coming down to tell them what a bunch of racists they are. And when they're also Muslims, they're also, a lot of them have darker skin tones. And so I knew there was a more sort of nuanced picture going on there. And so I applied for some funding, and I was able to go there for about 6 months. And pretty much I was doing online research before and after as well. And just started connecting with people and finding out, just talking to the average people, because everybody's focusing on the migrant crisis, talking to the migrants, but nobody's talking to the people in the places where they're sort of stuck. And the people who are, having their city flooded and are scared to go down the streets at night because there's a lot of like infighting between migrant groups and things like that. So I got into that stuff, but I'm also looking at the people who were really antagonistic, the people who started creating like citizen patrol groups to watch what the migrants are doing, and started following the police and looking at a lot of conspiracy theories and rumors that have been passed around through those people. Also looking at a few sort of right-wing provocateur ideologues on YouTube who are sort of fomenting either hatred or fear or things like that, and looking at how they've sort of built networks and how they're in talks with each other, and how some of this stuff is really negative, some of it's really practical, just like we want our town to go back to something peaceful, and just the interconnections that are happening on the ground. And some of it's been really surprising. The people who are sort of speak in the most racist tones end up being the people who took families in and helped them, and even some of them were working in migrant centers, helping these people, and then on the other side, people that seem sort of nice and friendly and really devout Muslims, and they're like, these people aren't Muslims, they're all drug addicts and they're prostituting their wives out, and one of them pooped out on the train tracks in front of my house, and just and lots of people taking advantage economically, taking a cut to like accept money through Western Union for the migrants, or there were people who were telling them, oh, I know a secret way across the border, pay me X amount of money, I'll drive you over the field, and say, now you're in Croatia, but they're actually still in Bosnia. And they walk a little bit and get arrested at the border, and So just trying to build a nuanced picture that's not looking for good guys and bad guys, but just seeing what the situation is on the ground.
Yeah. That
Sounds
it
fascinating.
seems difficult, but it seems like you're doing some really good work.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. I met some really interesting people there too, and
sounds great. I look forward to learning more about this. This is
yeah, I'm hoping to get a few publications out in the coming year.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, man, I love historical work way more. And it's like the thing about archival work is your sources are so limited
Mhm.
that it's almost really easy to paint a narrative of what's going on, but the big problem is you have these gaps and you might
Yeah.
spend like a month looking for one source that will fill that gap, and maybe you never find it. With contemporary research, it's like the exact opposite. There's so much information overload, and you're like, I have to know all the local history. I have to know the sort of national history. I have to know
Right.
what the news reporters were all saying, what the people were doing day by day. I need to talk to all these people, do these interviews, figure out, and then from all this massive information, it's like, okay, where's the story? What do I pull out? What do I use? And it's definitely a different process, and I'm kind of, tackling that.
I know that
Yeah.
feeling. Hey, speaking of
Um,
publications, can I read a
yeah.
comment from chat?
Yeah,
Sure.
go for it, Don. I was about to do the same. You got me, so go
Do
for
it,
it.
Jared. Do it, Jared.
Oh, okay, cool. Um, GGC says, I am writing my dissertation on Bosnian coffee in an American diaspora context. Your article was like point for point some of the things I was interested in, to the point where I was like, dang, what am I doing?
So you've got a fan. You've got a fan in chat.
Yeah.
Well, and there's more out there for contemporary stuff. Anna Krogert is an anthropologist who works with a Bosniak diaspora community in Ohio, maybe.
Hmm.
And
Or
she's got
Ohio
an
or India. I think northwest Indiana by the Ohio border has a large Bosniak population, if I remember correctly.
Okay, and she's written something on coffee. Also, people like Alyssa Helms and a couple of others have looked at it as a social sort of glue in communities in the actual Balkans. So there is a lot of stuff on it. The the historical take has been done in the area. A lot of Serbian publications. Um, and that was, a lot of my background work was just reading those and conveying the kind of important points. Um, but it's awesome. There's so much. If you're into like foodways and
Mm.
you're a scholar of sort of how food is used to bring people together, coffee culture in the Balkans is it's like a prime example. And there's so much more that can be sort of dug into about the social processes that get pulled into the connections that are made and the sort of practices that are upheld by serving people coffee and making them coffee and what it means. Marko Živkovic, I think is his name, at U Alberta. He's got a great article about the idea of like who drinks Turkish coffee and who drinks like Western coffee in the Balkans and how that maps to identity and yeah, like there's a lot there. So I'm sure there's something that the person in the chat can still find their angle to approach it. But I'm sorry if I took the juicy stuff, but it's really juicy. And I found that sweet legend about how Muhammad brought coffee to the world, and it's just like, okay, I gotta write an article.
GGC says, oh, I'll be contacting you.
Hell yeah.
Well, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
So I'm gonna skip ahead to this next question. And if the answer is coffee, I'm gonna make you say something else. But what's the food you associate with your fieldwork that you miss the most?
Well, I don't miss any of it because I actually met my wife in
Oh,
in Croatia while doing my field work.
oh
Or
hell
actually,
yeah.
before that, I met her. We have this really kind of crazy, like fairy tale meetup story that I won't go into here.
Uh-huh.
But and so yeah, we got married over there, and I did years of paperwork and trouble to bring her over here, and she's the world's greatest cook. and so she learned like everything that I like to eat with, you know, from my like completely empty North American culinary traditions, and then also like the foreign foods I love, any Indian or Thai dish I want, she's like mastered them to the point of like being a professional chef level. And on top of that, she's perfected all the kind of local food. And her mother was like a really good cook. She's from a region of Croatia that's really known for like all the women know how to cook well there, and that knowledge is kind of passed down. But the best food in the Balkans by 1,000 miles is burek.
Oh, hell yeah.
Actually, okay, it's you'd probably know it in a Greek context as spanakopita,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
but burek is the one made of meat.
Yep.
Ooh.
And so it's Turkish börek, and it's you make a thing of dough, and then you pull it slowly on a round table, and you pull it out until it's flat like phyllo.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take ground beef that's been cooked a little bit, and onions and oil, and you spread it all over, and then you roll it into a long snake, and then you wrap that into a coil, and you bake it in a round dish, and it's amazing. The former Yugoslav countries are like this beautiful meeting point of like Venetian Italian pasta cooking on the coast. Up on the top area is like Austrian and Hungarian influence, so a lot of goulashes. And then as you get towards the Bosnian border, it's like really Turkish inspired food. But every one of those things that came there, it got its own sort of local twist. And so, and it's fantastic. I've had Turkish burek, and it's never come close to Bosnian burek. And I've had Hungarian goulash, and it's nothing like Croatian goulash. And pasta, okay, pasta's too expensive in Italy, so I haven't even tried half of it.
But I've heard the pizza in Croatia stands up to Italian pizza. Yeah,
amazing.
there we go.
And gnocchi as well is really
gnocchi,
good.
Let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for me, burek and goulash are like the two top meals that I can eat those any day.
Chat wants to know if you could tell your fairy tale story.
Yeah.
Nah, that's too private.
Okay. Well, let me ask another question. What is some of your favorite occupational folklore about railroad workers?
Ooh.
Oh, man, that cuts deep.
Making Gordon Lightfoot proud, Mr. Canadian Railroad Trilogy.
I have to say I don't know a lot of it. I worked on the railroad for way too long and destroyed my body doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was not much folklore to be had at that time. It's mostly just like, you know, very interesting people from all walks of life.
Well, something to be said about that.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I don't know. If I know anything about folklore culture, it's like old stuff. You know, some of the songs that like John and Alan Lomax collected, and they've got some amazing. But even then, like the most exciting stuff that they had was always, you know, songs that were more for like games or for doing other work. Whereas railway songs are always about being simple and keeping a rhythm for moving things. So you line track, which is a terrible job, but you have a guy sits down at the end of a rail line that you've just built or that you're fixing up, and he looks down the line and he sees where there's a bend in the rails and you're trying to get them straight. And then you get like 10, 15, 20 guys with metal bars, and you stick them into the side of the rail, and he goes, you know, a little bit left, and everybody pushes that way until it gets straight, and then he tells you to move back or whatever. And so there's a lot of old songs that are just like that, but they're not super interesting. It's just like, you know, like, hey, go down, hey, okay, line that track, oop, you know, and things like that are just, it's just telling people in song how to
I think
so
you were like, oh, It's not very interesting and it's old stuff, and proceeded to tell me a pretty interesting example.
Yeah,
So,
I was like, well, no, this is yeah. Like, I don't know anything engages us.
chat wants to know: do you get a lot of railroad themed like Christmas presents and like gifts?
Oh, nice.
No,
Okay.
No.
no.
My
It's just it's not the romance people think it is. I
oh,
mean, okay,
interesting.
there's one thing about railroad work, and that is you go places where the roads don't go, so you see things that you've never
Ooh,
seen in your life.
yeah.
And
Mm.
there are crazy days where you wake up at like 3 in the morning. You worked a 20-hour shift the day before, or I've even worked a 36-hour shift. If you
Jeez.
Ugh,
um, and you wake up feeling like death,
yeah.
and it's super cold out, the ground's all frosty,
In
and
Canada, yeah.
somebody gives you a metal bar and just goes walk down the tracks a kilometer and you'll find where we finished off yesterday,
Oof.
and you feel like you're in World War I with a rifle on your shoulder, like walking in some French field. But you see a lot of beautiful nature,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about it. Everything else about the work is just like hitting metal things with metal things that hurt all your joints, and
Mm.
working with dangerous chemicals all the time. That
Oh, yeah.
the ties are all full of
Yeah.
creosote, and it's just like
Oh,
a
wow.
cancer slurry. You're sharing a hotel room with people who drink 30 beers a night and are like angry and mean with each other. You find good people in the cruise, and you joke about stuff, and you
Mm-hmm.
talk about whatever esoteric knowledge you have, and there's interesting days, but overall it's just very like always away from home, super physically kind
Mm-hmm.
of painful work, and
Mm.
it just pays pretty well. So it was a
Sure.
way for somebody with no
Right.
money to pay for the university.
Uh, Follow up question because the sleuths want to know because it's kind of a meme about the most attractive type of man. Are you forklift certified?
No, but I know how to run them,
Oh, okay, okay, just as good, I'd say.
and I can run a
So-
skid steer like I was born in it.
Oh man,
Uh, and I can do a backhoe pretty all right, but I'd
nice.
rather not.
Nice.
Yeah, chat
Uh,
says that counts. Chat says that counts.
yeah.
And then
GGC also says they have to go, but Dorian has my vote as coolest guest.
all right, don't forget
Oh, that's very
next
kind.
January to vote for Dorian at the Wisey Awards.
Yeah.
He will be on the
Yeah, hold that
ballot.
thought. Yeah, hold that thought for almost a year.
One last one of these like fun questions, and we'll get to your activity. But Dorian, what's your favorite weapon you own, and is it your antique Turkish short saber?
Who is this?
Uh,
How did how do they know? This is somebody who must know me. And um, yes. So again, I'm gonna have props, which is great.
oh, look at
Hooray, props.
that!
So this is an Ottoman era yatan, it's called,
Wow,
Got done. Wow. What's on
and
the
it
end? Is that a fish
there's
at the end?
yeah, there's like a fish or a dragon or
oh,
something on
cool.
the end,
Oh, that's neat. A
That is
mosquito.
cool.
and if you pull it out,
Ooh.
Yo,
What?
what?
How many of our guests have shown up with swords before? I don't know. This might be a new one.
so
I think only
it's
one.
it's very detailed. It's got the handle has
Wow.
what are called ears on it, um,
What?
Wow.
and this is the cutting edge. So and this was like a poor man's sword.
Uh huh.
If you had money, you would have a saber, which is called the Kulich in. I don't have an antique one of those, but I do have a replica.
Oh.
PG says that I was going to go, but now I can't.
Yeah, we're
And
bringing the
then
swords out. You cannot leave.
So
Wow.
they asked,
this
does
is
this have
what
belong to a janissary?
this
Sorry.
was this was made for me by a Circassian actually in
Oh,
Istanbul.
cool.
Wow.
And so this is the sabers that were used in the region by the Muslim fighters,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got a false edge here, which is called a yelman. It's a raised false edge. In the Serbo-Croatian songs, they refer to this as the feather of the sword,
Oh.
and they're beautiful things. They're very nice. But this
Yeah.
is a replica. It's got a horn hilt. It needs a bit of a better sharpening job,
Can
but
you scoot back in your chair just a little bit because the sword's a little long? There we go. Perfect. Wow.
so This is if you were a wealthy noble, this is the weapon you would have, and if you didn't quite have that money, you'd have the yatan that I showed you, and then if you were a peasant, you just had whatever you could get your hands on.
Yeah, Jared, ask that chat question one more time.
Yeah, would that the yatan would that have belonged? That was the first one, right? That would have belonged to a janissary.
Janissaries were known for carrying those, yes.
Oh, nice, good call, chat.
Nice, good job, BG.
I mean, it was just a sort of easy weapon to produce. That like nowadays, they're actually to make replicas. It's cheaper to make a kalich than it is to make a yatan. But at the time, those were sort of a cheaper weapon to get your hands on. A lot of the janissaries worked as palace guards a lot, and they would carry those in guarding duties. And if you look at any old Orientalist paintings that show someone guarding a door somewhere in Egypt or Istanbul or whatever, they almost surely have that. Whereas the what are called haiduks, the bandit heroes in the Balkans, the sort of Robin Hood guys that show up in the songs a lot, they had these great big belts they wore around their waist. It's called a bensilah, and you just shoved so many weapons into this thing. They would have like 2 pistols, probably a saber, a yatan, another knife, and pretty much when they came into battle, it was like pull the guns, fire them, and then it's you have to reload them. So they just toss them and then pull out the swords and get to cutting each other.
Badass.
Right.
So if you can find old pictures of like people in traditional costume there, if it's men, they'll often have this like crazy sash, and underneath it is a leather belt that's just chock full of weapons shoved in everywhere.
Hajduk, a word
Nice.
I'm not embarrassed to say I know from Drago Sa Dinte. Like the
I'm not-
Numa Numa song, if you remember that.
Numa, yeah.
old-
Hajduk.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
My,
yeah. The translation I found is like a 13-year-old that translated to outlaw.
Yeah, well, I mean, it fits. It's
Yeah.
and the word is used sort of widely in the Balkans. I think Romanians use it as well. I think it might be in parts of Greece.
Mm.
I love it. Don, I kept wondering, I'm like, why do I know this word? Why is it
Hajduk, yeah.
it's
Hello, salute, yeah. No, I've like pigeonholed myself as like a certain age.
Yep. Everyone, guess how old we are based on Numa Numa.
Yeah, exactly. Based on our looking up, fan translations of Numa Numa. I can't hear that word without hearing the whole song. Same, absolutely the same.
Nope, I can't. Yeah, nope, it's over. The rest of the night is just that.
Dorian, are you ready to transition boldly into the last little section of your interview here?
Sure.
Okay, as you know, we like to play a game with the guests. Sometimes it's a tier list, sometimes it's a playlist. And as me and the sleuths were putting together your questions, we were like, we don't like know a ton about the region. You know, we tried to study up, read a lot of the stuff you wrote, but we did know one thing, that Balkan music goes hard. We kept saying that. So, Dorian, I'm going to have you build a playlist. And let me hit watch stream real quick on Discord so you can see this on your end too.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to switch over. Okay. So, Dorian, we are going to build a playlist. And this is Dorian Juric's Balkan Music No Skips playlist. All right? So, I want you to put together a banger of a playlist for some people. Maybe it's music that reminds you of doing field work. Maybe it's music, you know, that your wife loves, or you know, your family loves, etc. But if you were, this is going to live on the Folkwise Spotify page, so I know a lot of people follow us on Spotify for the playlists. So if people want to listen to this, but what are some tunes you can recommend from this region of the world? Yeah, it's Chad, it is saved. If you follow Folkwise on Spotify, you'll be able to listen to this playlist. Yeah. So what are some songs that you can recommend some people we can put in this playlist?
Oh man, the funny thing about this region is I'm so much more into like historical songs than modern songs.
Well, we can we can see what's there. We can see what's there, you know, because I think there might be some folk music.
if you don't mind me cheating a bit, I'm gonna open my music folder on
No,
my.
please do.
GGC says Turbo Folk.
No,
Can
stay
we
away
see
from
the
Turbo. No. Okay, so I'm gonna give you
Dino Merlin and ask him Dino.
Dino Merlin is great.
Dino Merlin, should we find some Dino Merlin first off?
Yeah, sure, you can throw him on there.
What are you thinking? What's a good song for him?
Oh boy. There's a song called Burek. That's funny.
Burek. Oh, it's the album Burek. Or the song Burek.
The thing is, I know Dino Merlin mostly from like just them playing him in coffee shops over there. He's got a great voice, but I'm not great for what is his best song. Hey, I know which one.
Go for it.
Okay, so look up Dino Merlin, Jedan Dan, Jedna Noć.
How do you spell that?
Jedan.
There we go. Found
Yeah,
it.
throw that on there.
Let's add it.
Okay.
I'll play this a little bit too. And what is this? What can you tell us about this song?
I don't know. He's just like he's a crooner
Nice.
from an older generation, but these are the kind of songs that everybody knows. This is like your, I don't know, Creedence Clearwater Revival or like.
You said like crooner is like a Frank Sinatra.
Not quite that.
Okay,
It's more like it's like Hotel California or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Everyone knows. There's certain parts that everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the everyone sings the part they know very loud in the bar. I feel you.
Exactly.
Right. With confidence.
Wow, GGC saw him in St. Louis, and it was the greatest audience she'd ever been in.
Very nice. But I'm going to take us into better territory now.
Let's do it.
Okay, first one, look up Damir, Damir.
Uh-huh.
And his last name is Imamovic.
Imamovic, yep.
Okay.
And do you know what song we're putting on from Damir?
Right there, the second one. Razbolje se lijepa harja.
And what's this?
So this music is called Sevdah. It's like Turkish-inspired Bosnian urban songs. And this guy's going back into like historical songs and redoing them for like a modern age.
Nice.
He's the best person doing this right now. And this song is really cool. A lot of Sevdahs are about like someone dying from an illness and also dying from like love hurt.
Oh, the double whammy.
And so this is a song about a woman who gets sick, and then all of her suitors come to ask her how she's doing. Will she get better? One of them says, like, how are you feeling? The other one says, I would take your illness for you. The other one says, I would die for you. And she says, don't take my illness, don't die for me. Just lay down beside me, and I think I'll be a little bit better. He's a beautiful singer. He's really, I think he's doing something with, what are they called? What's the big American folklore record company from the 60s?
Folkways?
Yes, he's got an album coming out this year with Folkways.
Nice. Who you want to put on next?
Bielo Dugme.
And that is B-E...
B-I-J-E.
There we go.
Now these guys are like the super hip rock stars from
Cool.
From Yugoslavia, and they have a lot of hits that are okay. But there's one song that's not a really big hit, but it's my favorite song of theirs.
Which is?
Oh man, I'm just blanking on it because I'm feeling a little. I wasn't prepped for this at all.
Oh, just hit me with anything.
And now it's totally blank from me, so I'm looking at
your most played songs.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It's called. So type in J-E-R.
J-E-R. Yeah.
Right there. Jerka do Stariš.
Jerka do Stariš. Ooh.
Oh yeah. All right.
Are these the contemporary group?
No. So they were big in the '80s.
Got it.
They also they took a lot of traditional songs and turned them into like rock hits. And
from when Yugoslavia was Yugoslavia. I got you now.
And their guitarist is Goran Bregovic. Maybe you've heard of him. He often took elements from Roma music and sort of repackaged it for a South Slavic audience.
Got it.
This song to me is... Sorry?
GGC asked about, pardon my pronunciation, Dubioza Collective.
Oh yeah, Dubioza Collective.
Yeah.
It's okay if no, but I have a total crush on Dubioza.
No, they're great. They've started trying to sing in English and it's awful. But
love it. As a confessed Eurovision fan, I love that.
Sure, I'm gonna bring them up. Where do I have them? I haven't listened to them in a long time. They do a lot of like protest songs.
Cool.
And a lot of their slogans have been picked up by protesters in Bosnia.
Interesting. Like a Kendrick Lamar situation.
I have no idea who that is.
Oh, he's a rapper who Black Lives Matter would do his choruses as they marched.
Okay, yeah, that sounds. Let me find. Man, I haven't listened to these guys in so long. I'll have to look at the song names again and figure out what the good ones were.
Can we outsource that to chat?
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, I'm gonna give you one I'll finish this.
That one's Kafana.
Oh, come on, you guys. Type in KP, like K period P period. Or actually, you know what? No, I'm taking it back. I'm sorry. Type in KAZU.
This one?
That's a good song.
How do you say it?
Kaju. It's they say, and it's all these ridiculous like old wives' tale idioms.
Ooh, cool.
That's fun.
But it's talking about how stupid people are and how politicians can take advantage of them because they believe all this dumb stuff.
GGC says, "Cause that's definitely a good one, and the video is amazing."
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
So he's saying, like, you know, they say, there's one, like, they said we played well, but that the referees screwed us. They say that, like, Iran's making nuclear bombs. They say that, Bosnia is just a place where your relatives are from. So it's all these, like, sort of things that people say. And it's great. It's ska music with some rap to it. The next one we should look for is Edo Maika. EDO. Rap in the Balkans is amazing, by the way.
Edo
Maika, right there. Here. Yeah, and you want to look for a song of his called Trpaj. TRP.
This one.
Yeah. This guy has the most aggressive sounding voice. He's an amazing rapper.
Let's go for it. I'm so excited.
This is a little bit of an older piece, but he just raps so well on this song.
Oh wow, that is aggressive.
He sounds like Scarface. Yeah.
And when he gets rapping in this song, it's like really fast, really tight rhymes.
Can I fast forward a little?
It's about to start right now.
Okay, let's go.
It's one of the songs you have to really turn up loud.
We found Balkan DMX, chat. This rules.
I was gonna say, it sounds like, yeah.
Yeah,
that's exactly
I want him to start
is.
barking.
What am I looking for? Okay, so type in KUL. IN. See if it comes up.
Is it?
Oh, No, it's not going to. So space and B.
This?
These guys, Kulimban. Yeah.
GG
They only
says,
put
I
it-
was thinking about Turbo, really. Balkan music is what's up.
So these-
That's what's up.
This is really traditional music. These guys only put one album out. Let's see if I can find. I forget what the songs are called. Everything on this is good, but there's a couple that are really great. If I can open mine.
When I started today, I did not anticipate it. Like listening to rap from the Balkans. Like I'm folklorist has its perks.
I'm into this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm totally down with this.
Oh man, I don't know what to recommend here.
You want this top one? Is it the most popular one?
Sure, let's try that. Let's hear what it says. Sounds like. Yes, this is a good song.
Hell yeah. Oh yeah, I'm into this.
Yeah, polyphonic stuff.
Yes.
They also have they have a lot of really like more of the Eastern inspired stuff. It's really beautiful.
Hell yeah.
That's cool. I like this.
All right, GGC has to leave for real after saying she was gonna leave 20 minutes ago, and then you started talking about her research.
Yeah,
But
Adam.
hey, happy trails.
Yeah,
Thanks
have
for
a good
stopping
one.
by.
I hope to hear from you. The next person you can type in is Boban.
Like the 7-footer for the Dallas Mavericks.
Maybe. Boban Markovic Orchestra, the first one.
First one.
Yeah.
And what am I looking for Boban Markovic?
Type in OTPI.
This one?
This song, Odpisane. Yeah. This is Gypsy brass band music,
Oh, nice.
and these guys really take a lot of hits from like 70s Western, like almost like the music you hear in like 60s spy movies, 60s and 70s spy movies.
Nice.
This guy there's a trumpet festival in a place called Guča, Serbia, every year, and this guy won the Golden Trumpet Award so many times that he just started going, I'm not going to come anymore because I always just win it. I'll give it to somebody else.
Nice. This sounds like if anyone in chat played the Rayman Rabbids Go Home game. This sounds like the theme for the Rabbids in the Rayman games.
This is
the little guys, like whenever they entered had like klezmer music.
this
I
is
played trumpet in high school, so I'm digging this.
Hell yeah.
this maybe even wasn't the best, but you know what? Pick anything that he's ever made and you'll love it.
Oh, I believe you.
But this is inspired by this music came to the Balkans from Turkish military bands.
Oh, cool.
Here you can hear a little bit of like
Totally. I'm gonna turn
more
it
modern influence.
I really like
This
this.
rules.
Yeah. As somebody who did marching band and pep band, this is
Nice.
This is some Cowboy Bebop stuff. Oh, the Resident Evil stream will be back in a sec, Mal the Refrain, don't worry. But this music does go hard. Yeah.
Sorry for taking you away
No,
from the
he
game.
said I think I missed Resident Evil, but this music goes hard.
Oh, nice.
Can we get 3 more songs?
Oh man, I'll try.
This keeps
Can
going.
we get two? Can we get 2 more songs? We love ending on an odd number too.
Okay. Man, there's a song I always listen to on YouTube, and I always forget what the band is called.
Right.
You know what? Let's listen to some trash. Let's put some trash on here.
Okay.
Type in the name Sandra, Sandra, and then Afrika.
AFRIKA. Okay.
Sandra Afrika.
Okay.
So this is like the like bad like club music from the region.
Yeah.
And it's trashy as heck.
Let's do it.
And they often put a lot of like Middle Eastern inspired music into this. I don't have a favorite, or just pick whatever.
The album Air Max Reggae sounds hilarious, so I'm gonna do SOS.
Ima kompleks, hoće svuda gde i ja zovem SOS. Baš je nemiran.
Waiting for this beat to drop.
Yeah.
On hoće samo seks, sve bih hteo da mi da. Ima kompleks, hoće svuda gde i ja zovem SOS.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it now too. It's like, yeah, the part like with the drinks up in the air kind of thing.
Here we go. Oh no, come on.
It's a slower number.
Attention.
Try the one up on tops. Try the one up on top. See what it
Top
is.
one.
Yeah, let's see what this does.
Oh yeah.
This, yeah.
Madness.
Yep.
Oh, we got a good song.
I love this.
What is this guy's name? There's a rap song that came out. Kobe. I think it's Kobi.
Kobi.
I think so. And then
Is it
type in
this guy, second guy, all caps Kobi?
maybe. But if you
Yeah.
skip after the name and type in SRET.
SRET.
Yeah. Looking for a song called Sretno Diete. Oh no, it's with a C. I'm sorry. It's Tsobi.
Okay.
It might be how Kobe's written in English.
SRET.
Yeah. Oh, how do they not have this?
No, yes, they don't have it. Damn, rip.
Hang on. I'm gonna find it. It might be with a Y. Yeah, so it's COBY.
Uh-huh.
And then SR. Oh, did you have that already?
I did.
Okay, SRETNO. See if it brings it up. If it doesn't, then we're just plumb out of luck. Oh, see, I'm an idiot. I'm taking you the wrong way. It's this one. It's the second one. It's not Sretno Dete. It's Zlatno Dete.
Zlatno Dete, okay.
This is a cool song. It was made for a movie. I don't really like anything else by this guy, but this song has that perfect mix of like traditional music and kind of cool rap.
Mm-hmm.
It also uses brass band.
Right.
Oh, hell yeah.
Alright, I like it.
It's got some funk on it.
Yeah.
All right, you want to give us one last one for your 10th song on the playlist?
Oh man, I'm trying to think of this one song. It's so good, but I can't think of who sings it. I'm terrible at this. I'm a bad Baltimore.
Give it. If you give it to me later, I'll post it in the music tab on the Discord.
Sure, I'll send it to you in an email.
Sure.
Probably like 10 minutes after we're done.
Cool. Well, do you got one more? Or do you want to call it? You call it here at 9.
Let's call it here, and I'll send you
at 9.
I'll send you one or two more to throw on.
That works for me. The official Dorian's official playlist. Thank you for posting. Somebody posted that in the chat. If you follow Folkwise on Spotify, you'll be able to hear this and the other playlist awesome. We made with the guests. Yeah, I'm excited to. I got a plane to catch tomorrow. I'm going to be in the airport. I'm about to bump this. I swear that's going to be awesome. All right, I'm going to cut back to Dorian's face on the screen and say, Dorian, your interview is officially wrapping up. Chat, you know what to do, and that is post some ladders in the chat for Dorian. Dorian, if people want to read or hear more, just I don't know where can they go.
Whatever I whatever I put out, I put it on Academia.
Hell yeah.
If it can't be put on there, I still make a little space saver for it. And if you've got access to a library, you should be able to find it. Probably later this year or maybe early next year, there's going to be a book coming out in University of Exeter Press, which is it's going to be looking at all the hidden people of Europe.
Nice.
And so each country is being covered by a different person, and I have a chapter on the vila in there. It's going to be interesting. It'll be called something like social supernatural fairies in various countries or something like that.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Otherwise, I don't know. That's all I do pretty much. But if you want to reach out and chat, if you're interested in anything, you want to learn more, every one of these songs that we put up here, the bands have a lot of good music to listen to. I prepped so much for vampires and we barely spoke about them. But someday we'll chat all about.
Come back on a Thursday or something and chop it up more. All right. Ladders in chat, everybody. For Dorian, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. And
it was nice to meet you. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well, properly.
Absolutely.
Look at that. I had a lot of fun.